When you think about a small business, what comes to mind? Are you thinking about the small mom and pop shop that's right down the street and serves your favorite chips and queso? Or are you thinking about the local thrift store in town where you can find all of the trinkets that you weren't even planning on buying? Well, what if I told you that, in the eyes of the law, that multi-million dollar car dealership off of I-40 is actually also considered a small business? That is what we're going to talk about in this video. But before we dive into the topic more, hi everybody, my name is Brooke. I'm 29 years old, and on my channel, I do personal and lifestyle videos. So if you like that kind of content, please make sure to subscribe. I have a very fun video for you today. This is my review of the Everywhere Millionaire, Who is Really Rich in America and How They Got There by Owen, Zidar and Eric Zwick. Before I get into my review, I would like to thank Netgalley and Henry Holt & Co. Publishing Company for allowing me to get an advanced reader's copy of this book. This book will be available in stores everywhere on September 15th. So The Everywhere Millionaire is from two leading economists, and they break down the hidden fortunes of Main Street business owners, ordinary Americans who built extraordinary wealth and are quietly rewriting the rules of money and power. So that's why in this video, we are going to talk about the power of the pass-through business. So a pass-through business is a special type of corporation in the United States. And there are different types of corporations that you can set up in the US based on the laws of setting up businesses. You can have what is known as the traditional C corporation. Think about like your big public facing companies. A lot of those are set up as C corporations. However, there are also companies known as S corporations, and the S in this case stands for single. So it's owned by usually 1 to 2 people, and the way that it works is a little bit different than a C corporation. Instead of paying traditional corporate taxes, this company actually only pays the individual tax rate of the person who owns the business. So if you are a small business owner, a lot of times you will create an S corp or an LLC, and these are considered pass-through businesses. This may seem like a great opportunity for that small entrepreneur who's working really hard to service their customers in their community and really help them succeed. However, these businesses have really taken over America and shaped the political and financial landscape of this country. And a lot of this comes down to tax reform that happened in the 1980s. In 1986, there was a law that was passed that brought the individual tax rate below corporate tax rates. So back in the 1980s, think the movie Wall Street when you're thinking about the 1980s. You had big businesses making lots of money, and all of them were traditional C corporations. They were paying a corporate tax rate on what they were making. And at the time, individual tax rates were sky high, whereas the corporate tax rate was about 45%. And so in 1986, with this shift to having the individual tax rates set lower than corporate tax rates, this incentivized a whole new wave of companies to identify as these pass-through type companies, because it meant that they wouldn't have to pay as much taxes as a standard C corporation. From the 1980s onwards, you see an explosion of what Zidar and Zwick call the Main Street millionaires. The Main Street millionaires are not Wall Street millionaires. They're not Silicon Valley millionaires. They're the millionaires that live in Topeka, Kansas, and Columbus, Ohio, and different places all throughout this country. And whereas you might think about large businesses being your tech companies in Silicon Valley, your Deloittes, your Wall Street companies, your financial institutions. But what this book really focuses on is how the pass-through corporations have really changed the game for the American economy. So the first example that they give in this book is this family whose daughter is getting married. I think it was back in 2023, and they had an all-out extravaganza for her wedding. They had week-long activities in Versailles. They rented out Versailles for this wedding. And you would think, oh my gosh, is she like a tech billionaire's daughter? Is she like that? And actually, no. She was the daughter of car dealership owners. And so this is where we really get down to how the 1980s tax reform really made a modern day shift in how our economy looks. So now in the 2020s, when Zidar and Zwick are looking at how the economy is shaped, about 95% of all money that is made from businesses in the United States is through these S corporations. They're not through the big traditional C corporations that you think of anymore. They're through your local automobile dealership, your big realtor places, general contractors, all of these companies where you think, oh, they're locally owned, they're the sponsor of the high school football team. They're people that live in your community, and yet now they have amassed millions and millions of dollars, and they're building mansions upon mansions in different areas throughout the country. And this is not hard to see if you look in up and coming areas where tax laws are favorable in different states. You can see this rise in mega mansions that are being built by these Main Street millionaires after they've made all of their money in their different businesses that they pay very low tax rates on because of the way that they have set up their companies to be pass-through businesses. I really enjoyed this book because it really opened my eyes up to what Reaganomics actually did to our country. In 1980, when Ronald Reagan became the president, that was a big shift in the US political scene. We started to see the rise of the moral majority, all of this stuff, getting into the politics side of it. But I'm going to focus specifically on the economics part of Reagan's economics. So, Ronald Reagan, if you don't know who he was a B-list actor in like the 1930s and 40s, and then he became the president of the United States in 1980. And his idea with Reaganomics was a theory known as trickle-down economics, which is basically saying if you allow the business owners to have all the power, all the money, then they will bring that money and trickle it down into the economy so that everyone benefits. You know, it's that saying, rising tide lifts all boats. However, in this case, the rising tide only lifted the mega and super yachts. So take that as you will, but that doesn't seem very fair. Trickle down economics ultimately failed. And now that we are 40 plus years away from the ramifications that were created by Reaganomics, we can see how much that has affected 2020's America and our economy today. Let's face it, we are in late stage capitalism, and part of this late stage capitalism is this pass through corporations running everything from the small mom and pop shops that are just barely making ends meet to the millions and millions of dollars that realtors and auto dealers are making. And when these people make all this money, what do they do with it? Do they spread the wealth? In many cases, the answer is unfortunately no. For every tax break that has been given to these small businesses since the 1980s, about 80% of that wealth has gone straight into their pockets, and only 20% has been given back to their employees, back to the general economy. And so with the Everywhere Millionaire, it both inspired me and completely frustrated me. If you think about the American dream is to be able to be a homeowner. It's the ability to send your kids to college and have them live a better life than you were given. With the way that these Main Street millionaires have given money to campaigns and political things that will benefit them more than anybody else, it seems like a pipe dream, to be honest. It's not a dream that seems realistic. And the interesting thing is that when you look at who these Main Street millionaires are, many of them did come from humble beginnings. A lot of the businesses that they talked about in this book, such as Portillo's, which is a restaurant chain in Chicago, was started by a person, and he only had $1,000 to really start up this business, and he built it into a multi-million-dollar business. We can see that there were a lot of things in place to allow different people to become extremely successful back in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, and how now it just feels like there's more insurmountable odds to get started in this economy because of how the game is stacked against us. The landscape of US businesses has rapidly shifted. I do appreciate how Zidar and Zwick were very measured in their approach to talking about these business owners. They did not say that all of these business owners are evil or bad like we think about. They have a very nuanced approach to it. And while there are many business owners who do line their pockets with big bonuses and $1 million mansions, there are some owners that have been doing things that are positive for their overall businesses and for their workers. Unfortunately, these business owners are the exception to the rule. And while this seems disheartening, this book actually gave me hope. My generation, the younger millennials and older Gen Z, we are not going to take all of this laying down. If the election of 2024 taught us anything, it's that when politicians tell you who they are, you need to believe them. As we have seen from the platform of Donald Trump, he has enacted so many of the policies that people said were going to be outlandish and he wouldn't actually do any of that stuff. However, at the beginning of 2025, from the moment that he was inaugurated, he has followed through on many of those campaign promises, which have honestly hurt the US economy at just a very basic level. Whether or not you are in favor of Trump or not in favor of Trump, you have to just be honest and recognize how much the economy has changed since Donald Trump has been reelected. We've seen how the tariff wars has caused inflation. We've seen how all of these different things that he has enacted has really hurt the US economy. And I believe that this has really made people wake up to the fact that when he said that he was going to help the small people, he really meant these pass-through corporations that he is friendly with. He has all of these connections with all of these Main Street millionaires that are paying for lobbyists to have Donald Trump give them what they want, which is more tax breaks so that they can become richer and not to help their employees. What I believe is that to create a more perfect union, we need the owners of these multi-million-dollar pass-throughs and their neighbors to work together. We live in a time that is being labeled as the new Gilded Age. And the Gilded Age was a time back in the late 1800s when corporations were monopolizing everything from J.D. Rockefeller to the Vanderbilts to Carnegie. Lots of business owners, they're making millions of dollars, and none of that was going to benefit the people that were working. Since then, after the time of World War II to now, people have lived under this belief that the Gilded Age is over, that people can succeed in the US. However, it's just not true anymore. It's not true that the people who are born in this generation, Gen Alpha, and now getting into Gen Beta, it's not true that they will have a better future than their parents. It's not true because our economy has been set up to only help the ones at the top and not to spread the wealth to the mass populations and make the country better overall. And so when I read this book, I have hope because these people are active in their communities. They're active on their state legislatures. They're active on the federal level of politics. At the end of the day, I do think that they do genuinely care about their communities because they're very active in that part. And what needs to happen is that they need to have a reality check of how these policies have helped them and not helped others. I believe it will open their eyes to seeing what can be done to help the general public because Zidar and Zwick do a great job of breaking down some of the main things that they believe are going to be helpful to the US as a whole and truly create a rising tide that lifts all boats. And for me, this is voting in your local elections, caring about who your mayor is and who is on your state legislatures. Those people are creating and crafting the policies that are affecting you more than the president of the United States ever will. If you read this book, I want you to take away that you have agency. Vote. Get involved with your local community. Volunteer with the people who are on the front lines that are fighting for a better tomorrow. If we want the American dream to succeed, sometimes we have to play the game. And by playing the game, we have to understand how the rules were written. So I hope that this has encouraged you to read this book and understand how the US economy is really dictated by these Main Street millionaires and what we can do as a general collective to see our country become more equitable for all. If you got through to the end of this video, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Please give me all your feedback on this type of video down in the comments below. And as always, please make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, y'all.